day 10 of a headline-making trial in Brunswick, Georgia. Also joining us today is ABC News contributor and managing partner at the Cochran firm, Channa Lloyd. Thank you all for being with us here and really getting all of this and giving us perspective on this very busy day and a big day because, again, Alex, what we just saw was all three defendants, their attorneys resting their cases.
That's right, Kenneth. And again, we didn't know how big the witness list was going to be for each of these defense teams. We knew how many possible witnesses could have come forward, but still it was a little bit of a mystery. And so things wrapping up this early, especially considering how many stops and starts and how many delays in sidebars this trial has had thus far, was a little bit of a shock. I think another big shock, and we'll see how things progress tomorrow. We know the jury's not going to be until Monday, but I anticipate a number of motions being heard in court tomorrow. But you heard discussed earlier today testimony about a racial slur that Travis McMichael allegedly used right after that shooting. And it was a contentious objection from the defense about how that testimony would come into play. And that was something that wasn't brought up before all three defenses rested their case. So I'm curious to see if that's something that is discussed in motions tomorrow.
And Channa, take us through what happened at the very end there with Kevin Goff, because we thought that he may call some witnesses on his client's behalf, William Roddy Bryan, but there was apparently an agreement between him and the prosecution about what was going to be allowed there into the record, and then he decided to go ahead and rest that case and not call any witnesses.
Absolutely, and I actually think that that was the smartest thing he could do. I think that Mr. Bryan is in the most precarious position because, unlike the McMichaels, he had had no interactions with Ahmaud Arbery before. He didn't know what was happening. He didn't see any behavior. And despite that lack of information, he got in a car and, by his own admission, was cornering Ahmaud Arbery. There's nothing for him that would be beneficial for him to testify, and there's nothing that you can really or would want to bring in that can dispute the things that are already in the record. So he actually, for the first time, it seems, understood that phrase, less is more.
And Alex, let's talk about, again, probably still the biggest witness of the day. That was Travis McMichael, one of the co-defendants here. The man, of course, at the center of this because he was the one who shot and killed Ahmaud Arbery. He admitted that he had never before tried to stop and question anyone he's seen running in his neighborhood before he chased Arbery, that he'd never seen anything, he never said anything to him, that Arbery never said anything to him, and just kept trying to get away. Talk about, obviously, the big moments from him wrapping up his testimony this morning.
Well, I think one of the biggest moments in this cross-examination was the prosecution pointing out some gaps in his perceived training in the Coast Guard, in what he actually implemented the day of that shooting. You heard the prosecutor say repeatedly that, look, during this chase, if you're assessing a threat, what are the ways that you are looking to safely de-escalate the situation? And the idea that if you believe this man to be armed, you still pursued him. Also, that whole deal of probable cause being two-part, not just suspecting a crime being committed, but also that the person that you're going to arrest is the person who was responsible. And she poked holes in that narrative as well. And I think also, and this was a little bit of a spillover from yesterday, when you talk about use of force, and Travis McMichael went through in his testimony and listed the 6 levels that he had been trained on in the Coast Guard, 1 through 6. During his time in the Coast Guard, he had never gotten above 3. And he also mentioned constantly reassessing. You saw the prosecutor really kind of dig in and say, look, in your level of training, it seems kind of counterintuitive to basically go to a level 5 or a level 6 for a gentleman who's never presented any sort of indication that he had a weapon. He's never even looked to talk to you. He's clearly trying to get away from you. He hasn't stopped. You know the Fifth Amendment. You know that he has he's not compelled to talk to you, even if you were a member of law enforcement. That's something that you've been well trained on, yet you still pursued him and then ultimately escalated to a 5 or 6, 6 being deadly force in that altercation. And so, I mean, I think that was certainly one of those standout moments in the prosecution's case in their cross-examination of Travis McMichael.
Channa Lloyd, that parade of witnesses, those Scintilla Shores residents, those neighbors who were testified about crime or alleged crime, did that have an impact?
I think to some people it is going to humanize this idea of what they were feeling in that neighborhood, and that they did feel some sort of violation and they felt like there was this significant uptake in crime. And now, granted, what we're talking about in an uptake in crime may not be an uptake in crime in other neighborhoods, but for this particular area, it was an uptake to these particular residents. And I think that will resonate on some level with the jury.
And Channa, as we head into or prepare for closing arguments, again, the jury's won't be back until Monday, so that's when we believe those closing arguments will happen. There'll be some things hashed out in court tomorrow. But what does each side have to do in these closing arguments?
Each of the sides really, this is their time to weave together their closing argument, which is their story and their reasons as to why things happened the way they did. So this is the opportunity for all of them to bring forth each moment that they thought was pivotal to their case together in a cohesive story that they are presenting as their theory of this case. So what you'll see is you'll see them highlight the different parts of testimony that strengthen their cases, and you'll see them highlight the parts that poke holes in the other, if it's the state, what the part that was weak in the defense, if it's a defense, the parts that were weak for the state. So you'll see them weave that together in a much more cohesive story, highlighting those moments so that way the jury, it brings it back to the forefront of their mind. Because they want the jury to go into deliberations with that theory of their particular case at the forefront of their brain, having agreed or, at least have some leaning towards their version of how the events happened and whether or not there was a justification.
Alex, before we leave you for the day, it was quite busy outside that courtroom. We came to you many times and we saw crowds behind you, but they were also demonstrators marching in the streets today.
That's right, Kenneth. I mean, we saw people, some of the chants that you've become familiar with, especially in this the last year of racial reckoning that we've had. Those same marches, those same chants around this courthouse today. We saw a number of prayer circles and vigils. You heard that call out from Ben Crump and the Reverend Al Sharpton last week for 100 black faith leaders. Well, they eclipsed that easily here today. People showing up to give their support for the Arbery family and the community here in Brunswick. All in all, it was a very peaceful day. And I will say that it was a very diverse mix, geographical. We saw people as far away as Seattle, Chicago come through, but also demographics racially and religious compositions. I mean, we saw rabbis, a number of denominations represented here as well. And so, I mean, I think all in all, for the folks that had concerns about the attention from the outside that a case like this was bringing to Brunswick, or comments within a case like this was bringing to Brunswick. Today, I think a lot of them would say this was a success, and how they thought or wanted to show or the message that they wanted to portray to the rest of the world.
All right, Alex Presha there outside that courtroom in Brunswick, Georgia. Channa Lloyd, thank you. We appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.